good morning, everyone, and welcome back. For those who have only seen some of the videos or are new subscribers, my name is Shayna, and I'm with Lucky on Boar Goats. So we are located in Nebraska, and we raise boar goats. So two things that we are going to be doing today is I am going to be prepping one of our sale does for the Midwest Producers Classic sale that's here in a few weeks. Today is Sunday, July 25th, 2021, and the sale, for those that may be interested locally, we do not export. Just for anybody that's watching, we do not export outside. We don't do anything outside of the United States. So I get that question almost weekly in some form. We do not export. To begin, Brandon was hospitalized with COVID pneumonia, and so I'm just going to kind of tell the story of that. We are kind of I don't even know how you would explain it, the example of how vastly different COVID can affect anyone. But anyway, so this is just kind of the story of that. You know, we debated whether or not we should share it at all, but honestly, like, it's affected. I've taken on trying to do almost everything around here, and thankfully, help from my best friend and my parents, and so I do have help when I need it, but between the kids and Brandon still recovering and all that, it is a lot. And so the more we thought about it, even though we only want our channel to be about goats and talking about our goats and our farm, him being sick and basically the whole month of July being all about COVID for our family, has affected and will affect the amount of content we can put out, the regularity of the content, even our social accounts and how frequently I normally post on those. And so because I'm busy all the time, it is, like I said earlier, it's 6 in the morning. I'm doing this early, obviously, because it's going to be super hot today and I want to get it out of the way before the heat of the day, but also so that the whole family isn't awake trying to help me do everything, which, well, I say that and probably like in 2 minutes I'll have 2 kids burst through the door. But anyway, so this is just the story of how COVID has affected our family, and the only reason I share it is because I do find it just so interesting and fascinating how vastly different it affected all of the members of our family. So there are 6 people in our family, and so how it started was, it was a Sunday afternoon. We'd had a busy weekend. I'm sorry for the birds. I don't know if you can hear them. There's lots of birds in this shed, and they're all talking first thing this morning. But so it was Sunday afternoon. We'd had a busy weekend, and I was tired, really tired. And I just assumed, and I guess I should preface this too. So having a lot of young children in our family, we've basically been sick every couple weeks with some type of bug since like March. And so to be sick again, it really isn't a shock because the kids have been bringing home multiple stomach bugs. I mean, I feel like once a month since March, we've had some type of stomach bug hit the family. But stomach bugs, colds, random 24-hour flus, just everything. Like, it's just been relentless the last few months. Like, I have to say, from March until now, this has been the sickest portion of my life because it's just been relentless. But anyway, and Brandon actually really hasn't been. He's caught a couple of the bugs, but I am the only member of the family that everybody coughs directly in my face, and so I normally have I feel a pretty tip-top immune system, but since about March, I just feel like they've just been battering me. But anyway, the irony of that is not lost on this situation either. So anyway, it was Sunday afternoon, and I just felt really tired, just run down. But it'd been a busy weekend for us, didn't think anything of it. That was it. So the next day, wake up, feel normal. And as the day goes on, I start to feel achy, I'm chilling, but I'm not running a fever, no other symptoms, and then I am just so tired. I am not a napper. I just don't. But I almost couldn't keep my eyes open. And obviously, I stay home with our 4 children, and so thankfully Brandon works in the basement. And I told him, I'm like, I just don't feel right. I'm super tired. Oh, and I also had a headache. That was the first day of the headache. I had a headache, and I was like, I think I'm just run down from the weekend. I'm gonna go take a nap. Well, I think I ended up napping. It was like 3 or 4 hours, which is not normal for me at all. But woke up, felt a little bit better, still off, still had the headache. My headache ended up lasting about a week, and Tylenol, acetaminophen would not touch it. Ibuprofen would kind of take the edge off of it, but that was it. I'm so glad the headache went away. That was it was a miserable week anyway, but so all I had, so that was mine, and then for it'd be like day 4 or 5, I realized on one of my kids' birthdays that, and I can't even remember what it was that made me realize it, but I'd lost my sense of smell, and then I'd also lost my sense of taste, and it's such a mind screw, because then I realized, I thought back to the last couple days, and I'm like, I don't actually know if I could taste my food the last couple days. Like, I think my mind was just telling my mouth what it was supposed to taste like, and it's just so. And then Brandon, when he lost his sense of smell and taste too, he said the same thing. He's like, well, I think I can still taste it. I'm like, can you taste it, or is your mind telling you what it should taste like? Because it's mind screw, and it really is. You don't realize how much you need your sense of smell until it's gone, and then you're like, oh my gosh, if we have a propane, if propane's leaking, I can't smell it. If the house is on fire in the middle of the night, I can't smell it. And any number of things. Like, it's really unnerving to lose your sense of smell. Mine came back after a week, smell and taste. Mostly normal. Some things I feel I don't smell 100% correctly, or maybe to 100% strength. But I do smell. I do smell. It's funny. But anyway, I can smell. I am capable of smelling. And my taste has come back. Now, that was my timeline. I came down with, I can't even really say came down. I had a cough, like around by day 7. It was just a shallow, random kind of annoying cough. And obviously, thankfully, I should add in there too, we weren't going anywhere. I have no idea where we got it. I could not even, I don't know, no clue. I mean, I just have no clue. Especially me being the first one to be symptomatic. Usually it's the kids, like I'd said, that bring it home. And so that's why I thought I was tired, because it's always the kids that are sick first. It's never me. And so I caught it from somewhere, or Brandon and I caught it from somewhere. So that was my timeline. I came down with kind of a cough around day 7. Not really, like kind of just a shallow, feel like you have something caught in your throat cough. I don't even know if that's how I describe it. I've never had a cough like it before, but it never amounted to anything, and you can't even really call it a cough. But anyway, so Brandon's timeline, he Monday night said that he was chilling, or that he felt like he came out of the shower shivering. And I asked if he was chilling. He's like, no, I just think, the room's cold because the air conditioner's on. I just got out of the shower, whatever. Again, didn't think anything of it. He woke up with a fever Tuesday morning. Still not connecting the dots. And I don't know if I'd finished, I already forgot if I'd finished this thought. We hadn't gone anywhere this whole week. So like for us, quarantine was super easy because we had already not gone anywhere. And so thankfully that worked in our favor for not getting anybody else sick. But then thankfully my mom and friends were able to drop stuff off as I needed it. So I'm very grateful to them that they picked up our groceries and dropped off anything else that we needed. But anyway, so Brandon's timeline, he woke up with a fever Tuesday morning, and it was just a low fever. Otherwise felt fine. He went down, just kind of felt off, but just a low fever, nothing to really be concerned about. No cough, no congestion. Oh, he had the headache, I should say. He had the headache. I want to say he had the headache for the full 2 weeks, but now I'd have to ask him. I can't remember. But so again, those first couple days, he had a fever, pretty normal. He still went down in the basement, and sorry, my allergies are bothering me. Were pretty normal, and he just felt kind of off, had a little bit of high fever, went down to his office and did work, didn't think anything of it. Over the coming days, each of the kids came down with it. So my oldest, she had a low fever for 2 days, and that was it. And then a couple days later, the next kid had a fever. They ran it for a day. It was a really high fever, but ibuprofen brought it down. He broke his. It was done. Then the next two kids, and a headache was the hallmark for all of them. They all woke up like 3 o'clock in the morning with a splitting headache, like crying, holding their head, said their head hurt really bad. None of them ever had a cough. None of them ever had sore throat. None of them had upset stomachs. Oh, nope, that's a lie. 3 of them puked. 3 of them were puking, but their fevers were so high I wasn't surprised. But then the last two were the strangest, my youngest two, because B woke up with a fever. Sorry, these flies are biting. B woke up with a fever at like 3 in the morning, holding her head, crying, and she broke her fever. And by high fever, I mean they were dancing with like 103. And my two youngest wouldn't let me give them any type of fever reducer, and so like they just had to write it out. Maybe that's why they broke it so fast. I'm not sure, but their fevers broke. B's was probably within 12 hours, and Jack's like shot up to 103. It was so high that I was like, I really don't know like if we should be taking him to the emergency room because it got so high so fast. And then the strangest part, so my father had dropped off fireworks. It was the 4th of July, our Independence Day, for us to light off. And so with the kids that were feeling good, Brandon was, at this point, had been in bed, like he had just slowly gotten worse. He never really had a cough. Now that I think about it, I don't really know if he ever had a cough, but he had a headache. He just had a constant, steady fever. And he has asthma anyway, and so he felt, and obviously at this point we're very suspicious. I should say, this is already Sunday. We're very suspicious of COVID, obviously, because both of us lost our sense of smell, and that is a hallmark of COVID. And once we start putting all the other symptoms together, it's like, we're just going to quarantine. We're not going to get tested, but we're just going to quarantine from the start date of our, follow the guidelines, and we'll just quarantine from symptom onset, 14 days. Actually, it would have been 10 days, but we ended up doing the whole time just to be safe. But anyway, and so then Sunday, Dad had dropped off, my father had dropped off fireworks. I took all the other kids outside to light them off, and Jack was inside, presumably with 103 fever. And so I'm outside, Brandon's sitting on the couch with him, and it's 9 o'clock, and Jack just apparently jumped off the couch. He came running outside to light off fireworks with us, and it was the strangest thing because his fever was gone. Like, if you have kids, like 103 feels really hot on a child. And he was normal. His whole, his head, his everything just was, and he was acting normal. Like nothing had happened, and it was the strangest thing. But anyway, so back to Brandon. So now it's already run through me. It's run through the kids. Brandon's still running a fever. For him, this would already be like day 6. And it was on Monday, day 7, that he started, complaining that his chest hurt. And so we took him into the ER, to the emergency room. And I can't go in. I just drop him off. That's all they'll let me do. And so dropped him off. Checked him out. He was actually in and out really fast. They did an x-ray. There was nothing there. And, he has asthma, so, for it to be uncomfortable in his chest isn't surprising. And at that point, they hadn't sent him home with anything. They just sent him home, said a fever can last 2 to 14 days. Oh, he had tested. He was COVID positive. So that's how we know for sure. And I do find it hard to believe, even though the rest of us were never tested. Brandon, at one point, because I remember being irritated because I couldn't smell his morning breath, but he coughed right in my face. And just the thought of not knowing that he had morning breath was annoyed me for some reason. But anyway, so I know he coughed in my face. All the kids coughed in my face. They all coughed in each other's faces because they're kids. I'm really, really, COVID is kind of a mystery, but I'm pretty confident we all had COVID. But anyway, so he Monday ER, didn't send him home with anything. His breaths per minute were elevated, but not high enough to be of concern yet. And I mean, he was otherwise, his oxygen, I think about his oxygen levels, because that's one thing I'm going to suggest. If you do actually have concerns about either contracting COVID, you get COVID, you're concerned about what your oxygen levels are doing, is it oximeter? I don't know how to say it. I don't know what the right way to say it is, but it is literally, it's the finger meter that goes, you can get it at any pharmacy, you can get it at Walmart. I had Mom pick one up, just an Equate brand, which I don't normally recommend, like that being a good brand, but the Walmart brand, Mom picked it up because that's the only one they had, dropped it off. It was spot on accurate the whole time for Brandon's oxygen levels, his blood oxygen levels, and it just goes in the finger. It's about $30-40 where I am. And anyway, so that first Monday, his blood oxygen levels were still 98%, right? Really good. Anything above 95 is really where they want you at. Anything above 90, they won't hospitalize you for. Anything below 90, and at rest, I should say. That's something I learned during this process too. Because, okay, so fast forward, Brandon, so actually it was weird because Monday night, Tuesday morning, he actually seemed, his temperature came down, and he seemed like the closest normal, like he was still sick, but the closest to normal that I had seen him in a week. And so I was like, okay, maybe his personality had kind of come back. He hadn't ate still this whole time. I mean, maybe I can get him to eat a couple crackers or a couple sips of soup, but that was pretty much it. And so then Tuesday, I'm going to guess, because the process started Tuesday. He started to get worse Tuesday night. And Tuesday night, they had given him a steroid in the emergency room. That's what it was. He didn't come home with it, but they had given him something. And it's like he had done really good Monday night, Tuesday morning, and then Tuesday night, he had at one point 104.5 fever. It just went through the roof, and it was you're not supposed to have that high of a fever. None of the kids have ever had this high. But thankfully, because he was chilling really bad, so he'd had a bunch of blankets on. We took all the blankets off. I don't know if he had taken clothes off or not, but and so his fever came down to 103, 102.5, somewhere in there, and it's okay, it's not good, but it's better. It's a lot better than what it was, so we're okay for now. And then the next day, his temperature went down a little bit. It came down to around 100.5, 101, and so we thought maybe we're finally working, or maybe he broke his fever and now we're on the way down. And actually, I think that was actually the onset of pneumonia. I don't know that. Nobody's told me the process or how it works, but I mean, he went from being pretty stable, doing better Monday night, Tuesday morning to he just turned suddenly, very quickly Tuesday night. And then we went back to the ER Thursday because his blood oxygen. So when he was at rest, and this is important, at least locally, this is how it is for us. When he was at rest, so just laying or sitting at that time, his blood oxygen was stable at 93%. So it had come down from Monday at 98 to 93. But then the second he would stand up, so if he went to the bathroom, which was only 10 feet away, or if he'd walk to the kitchen, which there's no stairs, he's probably walking 20 feet, or maybe 30 feet. His blood oxygen would drop from anywhere to 83% to 88%. And below 90, they will hospitalize you, or they'll put you on oxygen. And by this time, he's already had a fever for 8, 9, 10 days, Tuesday, 8 or 9 days at that point. And he hasn't ate for 8 or 9 days. He's obviously exhausted. I think he's had a headache at that point for the whole time, terribly upset stomach. Basically, all of the things you can have for COVID, Brandon had all of the things. And so that morning, we decided to go back to the ER because we assumed that he was bad enough now that that they would admit him. And he was not bad enough yet. They did confirm, they did a chest CT scan, and they did confirm that he had COVID pneumonia. COVID pneumonia is different. I'm not going to try to explain it, but it is different than, typical, normal, regular pneumonia in what it affects, how fast it travels, how it affects the lungs. But Thursday morning, it was confirmed that he had COVID pneumonia. They sent him home with a steroid, and that was it. And again, all they would say is that if he is below 90%, if anything gets worse, then he has to come in. Which honestly, at that point, it's like, how much worse can you get? Like, I don't know what is the next step to this, because he's either going to come out of it or he's not, or at home anyway. And so then Friday afternoon, so that was Thursday, Friday afternoon, he actually seemed to perk up a little bit. Like, he was still, and I think that was also the first time he hadn't run a fever. It was like he went like 36 hours without running a fever. Like, I really thought, like, this is it. Like, we're finally, like, the steroids are working or something. Something's happening. He's finally gone without pain medication or, fever-reducing medication, no fever. And then so that was Thursday morning in the ER till Friday afternoon. Thought we were doing good. And then he really started to decline again Friday night. And he went from being like really alert, and not that his breathing was ever good this whole time, but just seeming more at ease, to then everything just deteriorated Friday night. And he just seemed a lot more tired. And his oxygen was still above 90%, but at that point, like, he could not, walking, it would drop it. I think at one point, walking did get down into the low 80s, and he had to sit back down, and then it would come up, and that's what they told us, as long as it settles above 90, I guess that's fine. And so then Saturday morning comes, and Saturday morning, I had heard him get out of bed. Our bathroom is connected to our bedroom. I had heard him get out of bed, and it was typical. Mornings were really rough for him because everything would settle. He wouldn't be sitting up anymore. And then he would cough. And I shouldn't say it's a cough like you're trying to cough stuff up. And I heard him go into the bathroom. I kind of fell back asleep, and then I woke up to like this knocking on the door. And I thought it was the cat screwing around. I didn't know. So I got up to see what was going on. And he was laying on the floor. He couldn't get up. He just couldn't get up. Checked his oxygen. Laying down, his oxygen was at 79%, and I would later find out from the doctor that he was in acute respiratory failure, and he was crashing, as his doctor would say, and so he had definitely, it really makes me wonder with the steroids, like, is that the right thing to do? Because it sure seems like it would, like, really rev him up, and then he would just crash as soon as that steroid, as soon as he would come off of it. But I don't know. Obviously I'm not a doctor. They know a hell of a lot more than I do, but still, both times those steroids were started, he would either spike a fever or, like, he crashed. Or it could just be timing. Who knows? But anyway, and it took him, because Brandon is obviously a big dude. He's a lot bigger than me. I physically cannot lift him. But it took him 45 minutes, or about 40 minutes, to crawl 10 feet so we could get him in the chair. And then his oxygen came back up to 88%. And I'm going to be honest, because I had one of the nurses chastise me a little bit for this. And, I call it living on COVID Island when you have COVID, because, even your closest family, and rightfully so. I'm not judging whatsoever, but nobody wants to come near you because they don't want to catch COVID, and I 100% understand that. I have no judgment whatsoever. But I had one of the nurses chastise me that, well, when he was on the floor, you should have called 911. And it's like, my thought was, we live rural, and it's not like they're going to get here in 5 minutes. Just them getting here is a process anyway. I mean, to be honest, 40 minutes for them to get here, get him, and honestly, I wasn't 100% certain. Now, I'm sure somebody would have come. We live in a good community. But there is that fear that if I would have called, is somebody going to come? Or because it's COVID, is nobody, because these are volunteers that come rural, that come locally, and so right or wrong, I don't know where we are. I mean, it is what it is at this point, but I really didn't know, and I was more afraid of just arbitrarily waiting for help that may or may not come because it's COVID. And you're just treated a lot differently, rightfully so, when you have COVID. But anyway, so I end up getting him to the ER, and by the time we're like 5 minutes from the ER, and he tells me he's losing, well, first of all, his speech, he was pretty delirious by that point. By the time we got him up and his oxygen had come up, I really couldn't understand what he was saying, and I wasn't really paying attention because I'm trying to figure out, okay, what it is. I gotta, get the pickup pulled up. I gotta get the kids going. I gotta get all this figured out so that we can get him to the emergency room. And so anyway, by the time we got there, he had said something about him not being able to feel his hands anymore. He had lost feeling in his hands, and so then we get there. Brandon is not the type to request a wheelchair. He's not that type of person. He doesn't want any, extra attention. And he had told me when I pulled up, he's like, I can't walk. There's no way I can make it there. Back to the room so I had to go in and tell one of the nurses and request a wheelchair. And they took him, and that was it. And so then kind of fast forward through the rest of it, it took them about a day and a half to stabilize him, which apparently is like a success in itself because he was crashing and in respiratory failure. But he is, the highest he was on was 12 liters of oxygen to keep him stable. And there was a point at 12 liters where he was 100% bedridden. If he moved, his oxygen would tank, and so he had to 100% of the time lay in bed for about, from the time he got there, was it about 3 days? I think it was the first 3 days. And so then once they got him stable, they moved him to the next level of care, and they did things like BiPAP on him. They had breathing treatments that they did. I think Brandon said 4 times a day. I checked in with the nurses morning and night, and then spoke with the doctor. But it just happened so quickly. And this is what they had told me. They had told me the whole time. Whenever I would ask about prognosis, progress, anything, every single one, doctors, nurses, they all told me the same thing. We just have to wait and see. We have to wait and see what his body will do. We have to wait and see. And they would never directly come out and say it, but it was very much assumed. We have to wait and see which way is he going to turn. Is he just going to come out of this, or is he going to tank again? Is he going to need intubation or even more oxygen? And I want to say it happened probably, to be fair, probably in 36 hours went from being 100% bedridden and on 12 liters of oxygen, which, to be fair, I don't know if that's a lot of oxygen. I feel like, sorry, my nose itches. If you need any oxygen, that's probably a lot of oxygen. But he went from needing 12 liters of oxygen to needing no oxygen and getting up and being able to move around the room by himself. It happened so fast that he just came back. Like I said, a day and a half, and then they kept him, I want to say, another day and a half just to make sure that he was truly stable. Um, but he still has pneumonia, and there's so much more to this story I could share. But I'm finally to the point where it was just a long. If you end up in this situation, maybe there's some parts to this you can glean. Oh, my nose. There's some parts to this that you can glean if you or a loved one ends up in this situation. That oxygen monitor, it literally is a lifesaver. I mean, it is accurate. I feel like most Walmart brand devices are not reliable, but this one really is. And I would recommend that. Monitor breaths per minute. When Brandon was sleeping at night, the night before he ended up being hospitalized, his breaths per minute were up to like 27 to 30 breaths per minute, which is really fast. And the highest I had ever seen it was go to 30 breaths per minute before then, and even now, but he still has pneumonia. But like, I believe anything 20 for sure is normal. Anything below 24 isn't of concern to my understanding. Again, this is not to replace medical advice, it's just what I've seen. So if you have a loved one, at least you have a parameter, because I feel like I was just learning everything as I go, which is stressful in itself. But yeah, so Brandon is recovering. And there's not good things I learned about this, which I shouldn't say not good. I understand, but it just adds more like scrutiny and skepticism to all of it. And obviously I know COVID, I should have said that in the beginning, I know COVID is a highly polarizing topic for a lot of people in either direction. And this is just our story. More so to, number one, explain why we haven't really been present over the last month. Number two, maybe give you some pointers. If, heaven forbid, you have a family member that is experiencing this, you can drop off an oxygen monitor and it could help them tremendously. If they have asthma, or if they're having breathing struggles, or if they're uncertain of where they are with their breathing. But I know COVID is highly polarizing, and so this is where we've been the last month. I'm super busy because Brandon is obviously, he's doing more and more every day. He's been home now for over a week. He's doing more and more every day, but he is limited. He still has pneumonia. Pneumonia anyway takes a while to clear up. COVID pneumonia, it's just like anything. With every nurse, doctor, anybody I've talked to, this was what I was going to say is the frustrating part. Nobody really knows. They have educated assumptions that they're making based on their experience with asthma or pneumonia or other things, but when it comes to COVID, nobody can actually give you an answer because honestly nobody knows, and they were very forthcoming with that. Like when Brandon was getting ready to get discharged from the hospital, and I had asked his doctor, I was on the phone with the doctor, and I had asked, well, do we need to do breathing treatments at home? Like, will you send that? And I swear to you, as sure as the sun rises in the east, I swear to you, he laughed and he said, honestly, we don't even know if they do anything. We do it to make ourselves feel good. We're not convinced that they're actually helping with COVID. And I don't know how many nurses, for sure the first night the nurse had told me, we are just sustaining him and putting out any of the other fires that are coming along with COVID, but COVID itself just has to ride its own course. There's nothing we can do to put out the fire of COVID once it's started. So yeah, they just treat everything else as it comes up. But anyway, yeah, it was, and now it's funny because the ER doctor didn't want to put him on breathing treatments, but then they sent him home with Symbicort, which was awful. There's like a list of terrible reactions and side effects you can have from Symbicort, and he had all of them. It was not good. So he had to quit the Symbicort, and then our primary care physician has now put him on a breathing treatment, a different inhaler, and maybe a steroid or something. And she'd even said, we don't know, so we're just gonna give you everything and just see if it doesn't push you over like this last hump of the pneumonia that you have. His pneumonia has improved from the last scan that he had. So that's good news from the last scan in the hospital. But this has just been fascinating. It is, now that we're out of it, hindsight, it's fascinating to like look back in how it worked and how it had almost no effect on me, and just kind of an average, I would call like a typical effect for the most part on the kids. The kids are always sick. If I hadn't lost my sense of smell and Brandon hadn't gone down the path he'd gone, I just would have thought the kids had just another bug, and because the kids for sure showed no typical symptoms of COVID. Or I should say typical adult symptoms? I don't know. I guess I don't know how to answer that question. So anyway, I know this was a long story to tell, but there was a lot. I hope there's pieces of this that can be useful to somebody or somebody's loved ones that could help them. And I'm sure there'll be questions about this. And again, Brandon and I, we don't want to talk or do anything political on our channel or anything polarizing. We just want to talk about goats. But I'm sure the question is there. No, neither Brandon and I were vaccinated. Brandon has pretty severe asthma, which is really not that surprising then that he had such a bad reaction to COVID. And I have I have kidney disease, but it's not, my kidneys are fully functional as of right now. But we had talked a lot since the vaccine has come out about Brandon getting vaccinated. Like, I'm just not one, I just don't have interest in getting vaccinated with an mRNA, or at least not now anyway. But Brandon, we had talked a lot about it for this reason, because we knew the risk that he was taking. But for him, and even now, because we've talked about it now, and he's like, I don't want to get COVID again, obviously, but I just, there's risk with any vaccine. There are people that have had bad reactions to it. Brandon already had a bad reaction to COVID, so then Brandon's rationale is the thought of putting more COVID in my body is terrifying. But anyway, that's something, we're going to talk with our physician once we get over this hump. We can't, I don't know if you know this, or at least this is locally, like with our doctors and everybody we've talked to locally, that even if Brandon desperately desired to get the vaccine, they would not let him get it for at least 3 months from the date of infection. And that's because you have apparently a heightened immune response when your antibodies are still so high from being sick. And so that's something we're going to talk about with his doctor, is that, like, well, Brandon got so sick, should we be like monitoring something else before, if he decides to get the vaccine? So I don't know, lots of things for us to discuss and decide. And Brandon and I are very much of the opinion that you have the right to make the choice to get vaccinated for yourself individually. Even individually, Brandon respects my decision to not get it. If he wants to get it, that is 100% up to him. I completely understand. I was the one kind of actually pushing for him to get it before he got sick, but he was adamant he didn't want it, and that's totally fine. And we're here. We've learned a lot, but we still stand by it's your decision. And so, because it's an mRNA vaccine, it's this brand new mRNA research may not be brand new, but this vaccine is the first of its kind. And so, yeah, this is our story. This is where we are. I don't know if Brandon's gonna get it. But yeah, and if you look, there really is a lot of interesting research about natural immunity post-COVID infection. And so, I don't know, we have a lot of discussions to have with our doctor about this. And so, we're both ones that we definitely want to make educated decisions. So yeah, that is an update on us. And now I am going to go get a doe ready to be pictured.